Okay, welcome to War and Battleground. It's Thursday, 9 June, the year of our Lord, 2022. At the start of next hour, the broadcast and coverage on CNN and MSNBC will start on the 6th January committee. We're very honored to have Elise Stefanik. Congressman Stefanik came to really national attention when she was really the leader, I think, stepped up to lead the charge on the President Trump's first impeachment and really had a national platform, and I think just was stunning for a woman so young. Then, again, in another act of courage, she stepped up and challenged the congressman from Wyoming, Cheney, for conference chair, one that has been one instance after the other of vision, courage, and steadfastness. Now she's really been deemed the head of the, I guess, counter-programming or to give the response to the 6th January committee. Elise Stefanik, Congressman Stefanik, welcome. Thank you. I just will lay out what I think people have a lot of confidence in you, given what you did on the first impeachment, given how you've handled yourself and comported yourself to take conference chair and what you've done as conference chair, I think, to add some stability. Just walk us through, what are your thoughts about this tonight, and what is your plan of how you're marshaling your troops and your information to kind of counter this?
Well, this is nothing more than a partisan witch hunt. It is Nancy Pelosi's illegitimate committee that has nothing to do about focusing on the facts, focusing on the truth. Its only purpose is to really have Democrats target Trump voters and Republican members of Congress. It's an illegitimate committee and really unprecedented, Steve, because for the first time in the history of the House, in the history of Congress, goes against 232 years of precedent. There were no Republican appointed members. So any committee in Congress, both the majority and minority parties are able to nominate and appoint those members. And in this case, Nancy Pelosi shredded all precedent. So there are no Republican appointed positions. Why does that matter? It means that unlike even impeachment hoax part 1, which we remember in the bunker of the basement conducted by Adam Schiff, at least you had Republican members like myself, Jim Jordan, and others to be able to cross-examine the witnesses, to look at all of the evidence. There is nothing related to this, no opportunity for Republicans to ask the tough questions. I also believe that this committee is part of a cover-up for Nancy Pelosi. The Democratic chair, Benny Thompson, said the only office that's off limits to the January 6th committee is Nancy Pelosi's office. She oversees security of the U.S. Capitol complex. There were warnings and intelligence, and as soon as our members started asking those critical questions, she pulled them from the committees, and I think what we will see this evening is a political circus and a desperate attempt for Democrats to change the narrative from the issues that actually matter to the American people.
So let me take that one at a time. One of the reasons I think you were so effective in the first impeachment and impressed the American people so much with your lawyerly skills and knowledge and just understanding of things is that you guys were on the committee, but you also had the evidence. You knew what they were putting forward because you had a minority position. You guys could go through it. Tonight, I mean, you're going to see it as the public sees it. And it's not even a hearing. It's going to be some multimedia. I actually know the producer from Hollywood of the documentary film. He's the son of a very famous Goldcrest. I think they own Goldcrest Film. He's a very famous documentary filmmaker, but he's a British filmmaker. And I don't think no one's seen his footage. So how do you do it tonight differently than you did it the first time when you could actually cross-examine, but you knew kind of what was coming at you and you could kind of punch back? How are you guys going to handle this tonight when you're going to see it in real time as the nation sees it?
Well, we have very experienced members like Jim Jordan, like myself, like Leader McCarthy, who have gone through sort of the impeachment hoaxes part 1 and 2, where the Democrats really, yes, we saw the evidence. There was no evidence that proved any type of impeachable offenses, but we were able to rapid respond in those hearings. My plan is to make sure that our members are immediately setting the record straight. We will push back aggressively on edited and doctored evidence, which we have already seen. For example, when they showed certain texts earlier before these hearings, those texts were doctored. So we know that. They've changed the rules of this committee multiple times. We'll also call out the fact, Steve, that you said they hired a producer, a Hollywood producer, a former executive from ABC News, who is mostly known because he silenced victims of Jeff Epstein. He's paid for by taxpayers. They already have the book, the report from this Pelosi committee listed on Amazon. So that tells you everything you need to know. What it also tells you, and I'm a big believer that the American people are smart, is they're not having primetime hearings on the inflation crisis, on the border crisis, on the gas crisis, on the crime crisis, on the baby formula shortage. Not only are they not having primetime hearings on those subjects, they're having no hearings on those subjects. So this is just shameless attempt at creating a political circus to try to change the narrative. And we will push back aggressively. You'll see Republicans on the airwaves, but you'll also see the House Republican Conference, as the hearing is ongoing, pushing back, setting the record straight, and reminding folks that the only office that's off limits to this investigation is Nancy Pelosi's office. At her guidance, the Sergeant at Arms refused to comply with the request for information about communication between the potential threats, U.S. Capitol Police, and the Speaker's office because they were concerned with optics.
I just want to make sure people understand this then, because there's been some controversies. Some people are saying they don't want to pay attention to it and they shouldn't. We should talk about other things. Others saying you've got to correct the record. Your strategy right now, what this audience should look for, because I think later tonight, I believe you're going to be on Hannity, right, on Fox, but who's not going to cover it wall to wall. You're saying that you intend to have a team and have members out there that you're going to confront the misrepresentations, the smears that go after, because I think they're doing two. I think they go after MAGA and Trump supporters and Republican voters, and also obviously President Trump. So the strategy now, as you see it, you guys are going to push back and punch back on everything that you think is inaccurate, a smear, an edit, fake news, etc. Correct?
We'll push back and we are going to set the record straight. That is our job. But it is also our job, most importantly, Steve, to talk about the issues that matter. This is very clear that Democrats have no agenda to solve the multiple crises that the American people are suffering through, whereas the Republicans have been focused like a laser. And I've particularly been ensuring that our members are disciplined talking about those multiple crises. So we have to do both, and we will do both today. My hunch, though, Steve, is I think they're going to get very poor viewership numbers this evening because the American people are tuning this out. I was just home in my district during district work period for 2 weeks. Not a single constituent, not a single voter asked me about the January 6th, Pelosi witch hunt. What they did ask me about were the gas prices. They asked me about the historic inflation when they go to the grocery store. They asked me why baby formula is getting rationed at stores. So those are the issues that matter. We will set the record straight, but we're also going to make sure that we are continuing to lead on all those really, really challenging situations that every American is facing.
One other thing I want to bring up before you go is go back to Pelosi. You know, there's all this discussion that she would step down or resign after she wins her seat this coming November. How are you going to hold her accountable? There's obviously something so glaring about this that since the speaker is so all powerful at the Capitol, how did this all happen? And about the footage she's holding back, the 14,000 hours, there's so many. I mean, there's literally thousands of questions that you could ask her. So, Chairman Stefanik, how do you intend to hold her accountable?
Well, importantly, we do have Republicans that were, again, pulled from the committee. They are conducting an investigation focused on the facts. And as my colleagues have said, the breadcrumbs lead directly to Speaker Pelosi's office. The Democrats and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, their top allies, top puppets, are engaging in a cover-up to protect Speaker Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi, during her speakership, she has shredded all precedent constitutionally in terms of the role of the speaker. It has been authoritarian in how she's conducted her, failed leadership over the House. She's going to be held accountable this November when she loses that speaker's gavel, when we have a historic class of newly elected Republican members. But I'll tell you, they've shredded a lot of precedent, Steve, whether it's subpoenaing members, whether it's kicking them off committees. They have broken this institution. I can tell you, for example, Adam Schiff will not sit on the House Select Intelligence Committee in a Republican majority. Neither will Eric Swalwell. And there are a number of members that are going to face significant consequences. And the person that has broken this institution is Nancy Pelosi. But what Republicans are also going to do is we're going to, again, address these issues, securing the border, making sure we have strong legislation to do that, to return to the effective Trump-era border policies, making sure that we are reining in our spending to, again, address this runaway inflation crisis because of the radical tax and spend policies. So we have a lot of cleaning up to do, but certainly, getting back to a Capitol that is the people's house, getting rid of all these authoritarian mandates that Nancy Pelosi has put into place.
People don't realize, I think, in our broader audience, the attacks that you're under constantly, and the personal has gotten quite vicious and quite personal. Tell us about that.
Well, it's not my first time being attacked, Steve. I was smeared by Hollywood, by Democrats, by the entire radical far left ecosystem during impeachment part 1. But what they didn't realize is I have a backbone of steel, and I will always stand up for the Constitution. I will always stand up for my constituents and my values. And the same goes through right now. I have been attacked. My family has been smeared. The media has been doing the Democrats' bidding. That's why it's so important that there are additional news outlets out there so people can get the truth out. What I've done is I've stood strong, and I will tell you, my constituents notice those attacks. The scam pact that I won't even mention their name, but they are one of the biggest scam pacts in terms of taking people's money and then attacking Republicans. They're running vicious ads in my district, and it is energizing my voters. Republicans, Democrats. I was just at a barbecue this past weekend, and I will tell you, it was a Republican voter and a Democrat voter. They said they had never seen as vicious of a TV ad, and it made them more likely to vote for me because I was being attacked by those leftists who are funded by Hollywood.
Well, last question. You're a new mother, and you've also, I think, gone out of your way to try to get women, particularly young women, involved in politics and particularly to run for office. It's been one of your, I think, leading efforts. It's paying off so strongly. This formula situation. I think one of the things I find most disturbing about it is the lies and misrepresentations and no sense of urgency from this administration. It's quite frankly, it's left me gobsmacked. The incompetence, the malfeasance, and just this lack of actually getting on top of the problem. I know this is personal to you, so what are your thoughts about this?
This has been an area where I've been proud to lead the House Republicans. So first of all, we knew this was going to be a challenge. I sent a letter to the FDA and the Biden administration back much earlier in this year, in February of this year, when the decision to close the Abbott manufacturing and production facility down. FDA didn't even respond until May of this year. Why? Because FDA was not doing their job, and it was sheer incompetence from the Biden administration. It was only when I stood on the Capitol steps with my colleagues and House Republicans blasted President Biden for failing to even mention the formula shortage across the country. He had to scramble, and you know how big of a deal this is, Steve, to change his schedule that day and get on the phone with formula manufacturers. And what have they done? They're importing goat's milk from Australia rather than addressing the FDA issue. And we also found out this past week that the FDA not only knew it was going to be an issue in February, but the tail end of last year, they knew there were going to be shortages. So I will tell you, as a new mother, there is nothing more harrowing than having to scramble to feed your baby. And in my district, just this past, we were working for Memorial Day weekend, and I had a number of ceremonies all over my district. So I went to the store to purchase about 4 to 5 days of formula for my son, Sam, and it was rationed at the store. And I thought, this is the United States of America. Working moms, working dads, every family is going through this crisis right now. Shame on Joe Biden and shame on Nancy Pelosi, who their committees didn't even want to focus on this, host a hearing. They said this wasn't a real issue. She put on a messaging bill on the floor. She waltzed on the floor, voted on it. That bill is going nowhere. My bill actually addresses the incompetence of the FDA. It also addresses and makes sure that we have more formula producers domestically, because that's really important as well. And I'm very proud of the Abbott CEO, who has spoken out and blown the whistle about how the FDA mismanaged this. But this is an example that, yes, this impacts every family, but to have, as a young mother, I'm the newest mom in Congress by a long shot, and to be able to speak from my personal experience about what my constituents and the American people are going through, that means Republicans are focused on issues that matter.
You know, Chairman, I guarantee you, if you had a hearing tonight on national TV, on broadcast, and you chaired it and just walked through the facts, so the American people would get the facts on the formula situation, it would do 5X as far as audience goes of the 6th January. This is the type of thing that parents, I mean, I'm talking to young mothers, and we're getting a lot of information, Moms for America. People are in panic mode over this. And grandparents are calling me that are having to take their spare time away from work to help their daughters and daughters-in-law. I mean, this is a major crisis that the administration just kind of discounts and dismisses behind some, you know, the White House press secretary stands up there, and there still seems to be no sense of urgency. I think the audience really appreciates the fact that you're getting on top of it. Well, everybody, I know you've got to get off and get ready for tonight. So Godspeed, and everybody's got your back. And if the vicious attacks means you're over the target, and they're coming for you because they understand that you're pure MAGA, and you've got the president's back, and you're one of the rising leaders in this country.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'll tell you, my constituents say, keep going. We support you.
Congressman Stefanik, thank you very much. Appreciate it. She's got a big job ahead of her. She's going to be the tip of the spear in putting this together. So make sure we're going to watch it. She says she's going to punch back. Okay, we've got a lot else to get to. I'm going to go now to Eric Greitens. Greitens, you know a couple of things about being attacked, don't you? I think I've seen one or two attacks on you personally. Is that correct? Is it you've ever been over the target and gotten some flack in this business?
I am honored, Steve. I haven't been attacked by George Soros, by rhinos like Mitch McConnell and Karl Rove, attacked by the mainstream media. We've been sued by the Satanic Temple. Literally everybody's come after us, Steve Bannon. And you're exactly right. It's what Winston Churchill always said. Show me a man who stands up for something, and I'll show you a man with enemies. Well, when we stand up for our country, those enemies come for us.
Let me ask you about tonight. Look, you've been one of the at the forefront of the 3 November movement. You've also been at the forefront of going to the border. I mean, you're pure MAGA. You're actually ultra MAGA. Talk to me about tonight. And Stefanik, we brought up one thing. We could have talked about 10 crises in this country: inflation, energy, invasion of the southern border, South China Sea, the chips and the semiconductors in Taiwan, the overall economy. I could go on and on and on, and we could have hearings, and you could share a couple, she could share a couple. There'd be primetime hearings that blow people away for viewership because people are like sitting there going, "This is my life, and I want to find out more information." But tonight we've got this. You've been attacked over that. Walk us through what your perception and what you think the audience ought to be focused on, and then what Eric Greitens is going to be doing tonight about it.
Well, here's the key, is to understand what the January 6th committee is actually about. As you talked about, number one, their purpose is to distract from all of Joe Biden's failures. And yeah, we could talk the whole show about inflation, the open border, defunding the police, critical race theory, military disasters abroad. But the big idea is they're trying to distract from Joe Biden's failures. Number two, they've used this January 6th committee to harass, bully, intimidate, and attack President Trump's allies. You've been on the end of that, Steve Bannon. They just arrested the great Peter Navarro. They attacked Bernie Kerik. They attacked Rudy Giuliani. They've used this January 6th committee like a third world committee to abusively go after President Trump's allies. And third, and maybe more importantly, is that they're using this hearing to distract from their failures and their crimes. You know, we have some really good investigative reporters in this country. John Solomon has exposed Nancy Pelosi's failures related to January 6th. And I encourage everyone to read Darren Beattie, read what Revolver News has found out about federal involvement in January 6th. Those are the real questions that need to be investigated about January 6th. And of course, that's not happening tonight. So everybody knows this committee is about a distraction from Joe Biden's failures. It's about attacking President Trump's allies. And it's also about distracting attention from the true failures of January 6th and the true story of January 6th, which include Nancy Pelosi's failures, rhinos like Mitch McConnell's failures, and the failures to investigate federal involvement in January 6th.
Let's talk about investigations and law and order. They just had a stunning tsunami or earthquake, however you want to put it, in San Francisco. They recalled the son of these domestic terrorists from the 70s, who was the DA there, in the most liberal, the most progressive city in the country. It was almost 2/3, 1/3. I mean, it was absolutely blown away. He kept saying, "Oh, it's right-wing billionaires." No, these are liberals and progressives recalled him because the city's so out of control. He soars back. In fact, Gascon, who they're talking about recalling now in L.A., who's got L.A. out of control, was a soars back guy there first. This guy took over from him. Zero Hedge and Daily Mail had a map up of all the source-backed DAs throughout the country, St. Louis being one of the prime ones. You've had personal experience. I want you to tell people what it is like to have one of these Soros-backed district attorneys, because Soros is an evil genius. I mean, he really was smart about secretaries of state, attorney generals, and DAs. Down ballot races, a lot of people don't pay that much attention to. He understands that's where power is. Walk through your personal experience with this, and what is your recommendation we have to do, and then what are you committed to do as a leader?
100%. Well, first, we have to identify this is key to the left's attempt to destroy the country. How do you destroy the country? One of the elements is that you destroy people's confidence in law and order. How do you destroy that confidence in law and order? You have George Soros-backed prosecutors who do not enforce the law. Instead, they use the law to attack their political enemies. And everybody saw what happened to me in Missouri. A George Soros-funded prosecutor hired a corrupt FBI agent to push a false case against me. And when they do this, Steve, they're using government money. They use taxpayer money to attack citizens at every level. And when they attack you, you have to dip into your own funds to defend yourself. It's one of the ways that they work. And their attacks against me, their attack against General Flynn, they try to drive people and put financial pressure on them. They attack their families. Now, fortunately, in my case, the corrupt former FBI agent was ultimately charged with 7 felonies for perjury and evidence tampering for creating a false case against me. And that George Soros-funded prosecutor, she was found guilty of over 70 instances of perjury. Over 70 instances of perjury. She lied to the judge. She lied to the jury. She lied to her own team. She lied to the investigator investigating her lies. And there's still an opportunity for the Missouri Supreme Court to take away her law license, which is exactly what they should do. But what's happening even more importantly at a base level is that police officers in the city of St. Louis, who she's also repeatedly attacked, feel like they can't do their job. Recruiting is at an all-time low. Retirements are at an all-time high. And everyone sees the way that murders and violent assaults around the country are expanding. This is all because of the George Soros-funded attempt to destroy the rule of law in this country. What every American has to do is to stand up and to fight against this. I fought against this as governor. I'm going to fight against it as a United States senator. We need to support law enforcement when they're attacked by these George Soros-funded prosecutors. And citizens need to step up at every level and take action. And this is the latest proof what happened in California, that you can get rid of these extraordinarily destructive Soros-funded district attorneys, but it's going to take everybody stepping up to get it done.
Walk me through that. You get to the United States Senate. How can you help from the Senate position? And then how can you also provide leadership for people who want to do it? I think we got it. We're prepared. This has to happen. The city I love more than any, New York City, is absolutely cratering. Cortez and everybody, all my buddies out in Chicago, say it's not livable anymore. In Los Angeles, where I've got family, it's virtually scary, not livable. In New York City, I spent the weekend with the anti-CCP group, the New Federal State. The Chinese and Asian Americans are afraid to walk down the street of Midtown in the middle of the day. They're afraid of being attacked. You've got the greatest cities in America, St. Louis, all. They're under siege by this. This has to be a priority. We got a minute or two. What's your recommendation of how we get on top of this? Because we've got to provide safety and security for our citizens.
Well, look, one of the things that the War Room Posse can do, just like the War Room Posse brought the heat on election integrity, just like the War Room Posse brought the heat on COVID tyranny, what the War Room Posse can also do is where you have George Soros-funded prosecutors who can be recalled, let's go in and recall them. Let's make those efforts. Let's step forward. And then in other places where you can't actually recall the prosecutors, when they come up for re-election, one of the things that we need to do is also put pressure on the business community to have them step up and say no more woke corporations. A lot of times it's these woke companies who are actually funding and secretly supporting this woke agenda. We need to have everyone around the country say no more to woke corporations who are funding a lot of these efforts around the country. And then finally, one of the things that we also need to do is to actually prosecute the entire money trail. Everyone needs to see where all of this money is coming from George Soros and Soros-funded allies who are funding these efforts to create anarchy and violence in places like St. Louis, Missouri, in places like Kansas City, Missouri. We do that, we expose the truth, we attack them at the ground level, and we can begin to take our cities back.
Eric, Commander Greitens, how do people find out more about you and your campaign and your social media?
Sir, we'd love to have everybody come out and join us. We're at ericgreitens.com, EricGreitens.com. Come on out and join us. Love to have you donate to the campaign, support us. We've got great patriots like General Flynn coming into the state of Missouri in the last 7 weeks of this primary, supported by Kimberly Guilfoyle, Veterans for Trump, Black Voices for Trump, Jewish Americans for Trump. We need every patriot to stand up and help us defeat the rhinos in this.
Commander Greitens, thank you very much. Honored to have you on here.
Yes,
Short
sir,
commercial
honestly.
break. We had Stefanik, we had Greitens, batting third, the Royce White. After a short commercial break, back to the battleground.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. Just to put in perspective, we've had two pretty special guests. Both of them, the commonality is that they're MAGA and they've been attacked viciously by the left. Elise, Stefanik. So the template for tonight is going to start in 30 minutes on broadcast TV, and I think CNN, MSNBC is going to cover it. Fox is not, and I know Lindell TV's not going to. But she said, look, which I agree with, and we talked about this in the previous hour too, we got to combat these smears. We got to get on top of smearing MAGA. We got to get on top of smearing President Trump. Look, the purpose of the exercise, and I've said this on Getter all day, if you follow me or Getter, if you're not, please sign up for Getter. It's totally free. You can really get insights of what we're doing all day long. Is that the purpose of the exercise is to try to demonize and other the MAGA movement, in addition, because they hate the populist nationalist movement. Remember, Biden last night on Jimmy Kimmel said, it's not your father's Republican Party. This is all MAGA. What he means is not country club Republicans that he's used to dealing with. This is populist nationalists. And I'm going to have one of the leaders of that part of the party, Royce White, on here in a second. But we've got to fight back. We've got to make sure they can't smear it. In addition, the whole purpose of their exercise is to make sure that they want Trump indicted so he can't run in 24. We're going to have this sweeping win in 22, and they want to cut it right off at the pass and make sure that Trump is not eligible to run president. That's the purpose of the exercise. This is everything they're trying to do. So it's not going to work, but we got to be on top of things. Really honored to have Royce White on. Royce is a voice of the populist nationalist wing of the conservative movement and the Republican Party, and has taken real leadership. A couple of things I want to get to. Well, Royce, first off, let me ask you we've had Stefanik, we've had Greitens. give me Royce White's perspective on things, because you're quite media savvy, given the fact that you're a major sports star and on Big Three in the basketball league itself. You're one of the dominant players, and even the way you interact with the media. I know CBS, who's so enthusiastic about your pro-Uyghur campaign and your campaign to basically stand up for Lao Beijing, appreciates you. But you're a huge star on CBS Sports when the games are played. So walk me through tonight. What's Royce White's perspective on this?
Well, I'm just tuning in. I'm tuning in to see how far they'll go, how much they'll lie. Same old from the establishment. Don't expect an ounce of integrity to come through tonight's proceedings.
Royce, I want to go to some about MAGA and about what MAGA stands for. There's a poll out today on Real Clear Politics that said that, or a combination, I think it was Quinnipiac, that said right now in Republican primaries, not in primaries, but in the general election coming up in November, that Hispanics are R+3. We were down 40 points with Hispanics in the 18 just 4 years ago. The LA Times the other day had this article about Ice Cube, the Ice Cube effect in Los Angeles in the primaries in California, which you had a big downturn in primaries, but you're finding black men that are now open to vote for conservative candidates. Give me your perspective. Are we seeing a tectonic plate shift? And if we are, what do you believe is driving that?
Well, the reason I got into this, Steve, is because I saw that the grandiosity of the federal government is undermining the meaning of community. And I think black people, first and foremost, are starting to wake up to the dishonesty and the lack of results from the political indoctrination that they've undertaken in this country. And now is a time where the Democrats have run a sort of political Ponzi scheme, and the results haven't yielded. And black people, because of their account of history and some specific leaders, such as Ice Cube, have stood up and asked very simple questions, and they've been unable to answer those questions. So people are gonna be motivated to vote and participate in their own self-interest, and we're seeing that shift start to happen right now.
Let's talk about Elise Stefanik's getting hits because she's stepping up on for this hearing, and she's been one of the leaders of MAGA defending President Trump. Eric Greitens they're trying to crush him out in St. Louis. They're coming after you hard too. What are these attacks? Particularly, it seems like they almost take offense. It seems like liberals, and not even the progressives, but the kind of these white liberals from New York City and Cambridge, the intellectuals. They almost take offense for particularly black men who would step up and say, and there's black conservatives, don't get me wrong, but a lot of those black conservatives have been Republicans. Their parents have been Republicans, and they've been college Republicans. They've been Republicans since they're 6 years old. And I'm not holding anything against them. They're fantastic and real fighters, and I love them. But it's different than some of the things we're seeing now. The Ice Cubes of the world, I'm not saying he's voting Republican, but what he's inspiring, people like you, people have not been have been apolitical or have been independents, or some have been hardcore Democrats that are going through an awakening saying, hey, look, now that I'm kind of seeing things, I might want to make some changes. They take terrible offense of that. And the attacks are quite vicious. Walk me through that.
Well, I think they're most upset that some black people are starting to really have a deep understanding of the founding concepts and ideas and values of America. I think they're used to Americans, black men, black people, but working class citizens all across the country who were, more interested in whether or not their politicians were using profanity and not so interested in whether or not their elected officials were selling us out to China. And that's starting to shift as well. And you have leaders who saw behind the curtain, who saw behind the veil, who understand how the machine and the establishment work in this country. And now they're speaking to that knowledge, and they're bringing that to the people. They're bringing that ministry of truth to people who otherwise had been kept away from that understanding. And that's what's happened, and that is how we lost the country, Steve, right? Is people wanted their politicians to be this replica of an ideal person or candidate instead of real individuals. And that's exactly how the communists and globalists and Satanists took over. But now there's a referendum, there's a reckoning coming, and people are tired of trading their freedom for security and materialism. One, because the security isn't there, the materialism isn't there, and we enjoyed this time of peace and prosperity, or this feeling of peace and prosperity. But now we're starting to realize that it's not so peaceful and it's not so prosperous. So the time is starting to shift.
You probably have one of the more refined geopolitical minds and senses out there, folks I've met, and particularly your understanding of East Asia, China, and China's threat to the United States. Give me your sense now in running for Congress, your sense of where you think we are with Taiwan, where you think we are with the South China Sea. I mean, one of the lead economists the other day just put out in China, just said, hey, look, if the United States goes to any type of hybrid warfare on economics with us, sanctions, coming after the central bank, coming after the RMB, anything, we have to go seize all of the chips in advanced chip design of Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing. And she then said, look, they're starting to break down parts of these factories and ship them to Arizona and to Texas to be rebuilt. We must stop that right now, which led me to believe that they're very close to thinking about a naval blockade or a naval quarantine. What is Royce White's thoughts about the Chinese Communist Party and particularly a potential coming kinetic war over Taiwan?
Well, I think we're completely exposed right now. I think our interdependence on China economically and in our supply chains is a matter of national security at this point. It has been for a long while, and it's the greatest indictment of our political elites that carved that path for the Chinese to have that leverage over us. And we're on a collision course with the CCP, and the American people need to prepare themselves out of national honor and sacred honor to feel some hardship. And any leader right now who would come into power has to be prepared to be very drastic and extreme with their measures against the CCP. I often joke with you, but I'm pretty serious that I'm a bit further right than you or President Trump, because if it was me, the starting sanctions on the CCP would be 50% day one, and it would go up 5% every 30 days until all of our manufacturers decided to flee from China. So when they paint people like you and Donald Trump as being extreme on China, I think in some ways there are more extreme people out there, such as myself, because the threat, right now, if China decided to close its doors to us, we would be in a bit of trouble, to say the least.
When you go around the district, since you're one of the leading voices on this, when you go around your district and talk to people that you're trying to get to vote for you, both in the primary and then later in the general against Omar, are people becoming awakened to what the actuality of how inextricably linked our economy is to China, to our detriment, and what the rising military threat is over this vital control of advanced chip design, which, I know Minneapolis is a music center, which drives the music industry, drives entertainment industry, drives our, the automobile industry, but drives Silicon Valley. Are people in your district, is it you that's bringing them to an enlightenment? Or are they already there and they're just saying, hey, we understand Royce is on top of this?
Well, I think it's been a foregone conclusion that China's labor practices are something that most liberals would even look down upon in a precept or concept of human rights. I think the idea about our economies being inextricably linked and what that implies for America's safety, for the safety of our citizens, but the safety of our markets, is something that they don't well understand. And I do have to explain that to people and sift through some of the garbage they've been fed through the mainstream media. The common thread and idea is, China has a growing economy, or they're not in this tier or that tier or stage of evolution in their economy. So we, as America, have to allow them to become whatever it is they're going to become, kind of as like this economic moral position that we need to let China become the leader of the world out of a self-loathing or an anti-American sentiment. But I just tell people, listen, when you can't get antibiotics, when you can't get tires, when you can't get all of these products that we've just willingly given to China that we didn't have to, are you willing to pay for your moral position? Are you willing to pay money and go into destitute for your moral position? And when you ask that question, I know in the Black community, many people are saying, absolutely not. We're not willing to sacrifice any sort of more economic hardship for some moral posturing in this geopolitical economic situation.
I know there's an article out, I know you're familiar with, NBC News reported this morning that they've got documents now, and actually the plan, leaked documents to them, that shows the Biden administration has a plan that on this invasion of the southern border, as soon as the illegal aliens come up from Central America, from all over, that they get them on buses, get them on planes, and get them to the interior of the country right away. It's what I say. It's every town's a border town. Every town's a border state. I had Todd Bensman on. I'll get to that piece in a second, Royce, but I got to ask you, Todd Bensman came on earlier in our morning show, and because he's the expert of this, he's talked about this for months. Now it's finally been revealed. And he's also written the book about jihadis. And I said, look, what's the makeup, the composition? Because we had Oscar Blue Ramirez actually there in the city north of Tapachula, where the convoy started, or the caravan started at 1,000, grew to 17,000. Now they're dispersing it, so it's not such bad optics. And what he said and what Oscar Ramirez said, look, the composition of this is Venezuela, Cuba, but it's got a big component of Somalians. Give us your thought. I mean, what is the situation with Somalians? Because I know Minneapolis is one of the centerpieces of that. And also Omar is in the middle of this. Now we've got supposedly these caravans are going to have a big component piece from Somalia. What are your thoughts?
Well, Somalia has been, Minneapolis has been one of the epicenters of Somali immigration since I was a child. I grew up in junior highs and elementary schools with many Somali students. So the Somali wave or transplant to Minneapolis has been on for 20 years at least. And like I said to you before, we have to ask ourselves who got out of Somalia and where do the Somalian people's loyalties really lie? If Omar is any indication, then their religious faith is not so central, and they are, culturally sort of on a quid pro quo with the government, with the federal government, and they have become dependent on the ability to scam the federal government out of low regulation. And that's not an indictment of all of the Somali immigrants. I'm just saying that when we look at the election integrity, when we look at Ilhan Omar, when we look at the Democrats seeing that the Somali immigrant community as a viable pathway to have a corrupt impact on this country and undermining this country. So I'm going into the heart of the Somali communities too, because many of these groups, I don't believe, actually understand fully the implications of the way they're being manipulated and utilized, and the effects that it will have on them as working class and middle class people. So this is a grand design where our elites have got people to vote, purchase, and participate against their own interests. And I think the truth can actually be a viable way to turn this entire thing around, or let's say God willing.
Royce, I know you're in a very competitive primary, and then the general election will be a title fight. How do people find out more about you? How they follow you on social media, and how particularly they find out more about this incredible campaign?
You can go to roycewhite.us. I am fighting against the establishment. I am fighting against all of the third-party fundraising grifters who want to take 85-15 splits and put 85 cents on the dollar of American tax-paying citizens in their pocket from these campaigns. And we haven't signed any of those deals. So, we need your help. And make no mistake about it, Ilhan Omar is one of the biggest opponents and detractors of Donald Trump, the America First nationalist populist movement. They want a socialist, globalist, tyrannical, communist, leftist, scientific technocracy establishment in government. So, roycewhite.us, you can visit, you can donate, you can sign up to make calls. I'm on Getter, I'm on Truth Social. You can follow my Substack. I'm everywhere you want to find me.
Royce White, go with God, sir. Fight on.
Godspeed, brother.
Royce White, that's a warrior right there. Man, this has been a lineup. Stefanik, Greitens, and Royce White. Wow. Okay, I want to bring Dave Walsh in here. Dave, we got about 4 minutes, and here's the reason I want you in. Here's my theory of the case, that if you put Dave Walsh up and had hearings tonight publicly on prime time on broadcast on energy, you would have 4 times the viewership as people would have on the 6th January Commission, because this is what's at the top of people's mind. Biden was on Jimmy Kimmel last night, and to me, he embarrassed himself. Right? Didn't know what he's doing. If you were to go through the American people, give me the 2 or 3 things that you would want to make sure they understood of what got us in this situation and what's going to get us out of, because all inflation, everything's predicated upon the energy crisis. Dave Walsh.
Well, let's the top 4 things be, and this is an old parable. We talked about Rickover days back to then. Energy planning is about becoming independent. It's about diversification. For the U.S. energy supply, like electricity, for example, heaven would be about 25 to 30% coal, 25% nuclear, about 30, maybe 35% gas, about 10% hydro. The balance could be renewables, maybe up to maybe 8 or 10% would make logical sense. But there you have a balanced capacity of by fuel, by type, that's all internal to the country for the most part, and makes you bulletproof, but gives you diversity in price spikes, which, for among other reasons, why you'd never want to be entirely dependent on natural gas because it is a reasonably volatilely priced item. So you want that bulletproofness in terms of your diversity. That's fundamentally important. The second thing, really big thing, is despite all this, if you will, happy talk and yada yada about renewables, our state of dependence on renewables is very, very low. I mean, at this point, we are still in a very heavy industrial global oil and gas based economy. That's actually grown. The amount of oil and gas used for power generation, for example, globally has doubled since the 76 OPEC issue. So we're even more dependent globally on oil and gas than we've ever been. So to create the myth or the mythology kind of in the public mind that this has gone away, oil and gas and fossil fuels have gone away and are irrelevant, is really, really disabling to most people. It's a very sad commentary or narrative that, we've fed people and up to money center banks and executives of banks and CEOs that this thing with renewables is here and it's a big part of our energy supply. It's not. It's about in the U.S., for example, maybe 12% of electricity maximum. The third thing with renewables that people should really cope with understanding, if they can, is the fact of base load power that runs all of the time, pretty much matches demand for power. If you take a given day, there's something called out west the duck curve. You've got a big demand uptick in the morning when people get out of bed. You go from about 70% load to about 90% of your daily load. It tails off in midday, then it ramps up again when people come home from work. 4:35, 5:30 to 7, making dinner, using appliances. There's another uptick in demand. But in any event, the lowest part of the day is about 70% of full load. So that kind of defines and describes you must have base load continuous generation for that 70% plus a reserve margin of about 20% that takes you need 90% stable continuous supply of electricity. And that's not renewables.
Dave, we've got to bounce. I want to have you back on tomorrow to go through this. I also want to do the CEO of General Motors. They asked her about her Volt car. She says, "Oh, it's powered by electricity." But then you break it down, you find out where it really comes from, coal and everything else.
Exactly.
And the battery changes things.
Yes.
Dave Walsh, and get him on Dave Walsh Energy at Getter. We'll see you tomorrow morning, Dave. Stay tuned for the fiasco tonight. See you tomorrow morning at 10.